I trust you completely until I don't. And the main reason I don't is I just get really scared.
I kind of felt like, oh my God, I'm not being discerning about
Right.
what I'm processing. And so now I'm just kind of scared.
Yeah. My name is Figs O'Sullivan.
And I'm Teale O'Sullivan.
We're emotionally focused couples therapists, and we're a couple.
In an act of sheer bravery,
Or foolishness,
we're sharing our own couples therapy sessions with the world.
watch or listen to us fight,
Cry
laugh,
and repair.
then grow in your relationships along with us through the insight we share as couples therapists.
There's a little kid inside of each of us just reaching out for love and connection.
Let's begin to reach back out to each other.
Welcome home.
This is Come Here to Me.
So welcome back to Come Here to Me with Figs.
And Teale.
And this week's episode, we're not actually going to share a therapy session. We wanted to actually do an episode to talk about the process so far for us, what it's been like.
Yeah.
You know, the process of doing couples therapy together, watching the therapy sessions afterwards, right? And
Right.
seeing what we learned. Then actually putting all of that in some kind of coherent narrative, picking what to share, putting it in a coherent narrative, and then recording the actual episodes. It's quite a process. It's quite a project, I gotta admit. I don't know about you, Teale, but I'm not sure if I fully grasped how many hours a week of work we were taking on in doing this.
Yeah, we're like, it'll be simple, this great idea. And then it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
An extra hour to watch the session and then to kind of formulate what we thought was important.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like watching the session back, it's more than an hour because we're stopping and talking and there's so many different little subtle points. But yeah, so today we just wanted to, it gets very meta, as we say, like, we do sessions, then we talk about the sessions, and then we are now going to talk about us doing the sessions and the talking about the sessions and the recording the sessions. It all gets a little meta, to say the least, right? But I do think it's important, right? Because I think one of the reason we wanted to do this particular session is it's an interesting thing where, like, obviously you see us and hear us in the actual therapy sessions themselves. So tiny little things can be triggering. Right. And then we process the way we get triggered. But then when we record the sessions, it's a fine balance between honoring what comes up between us relationally and making sure we get the task done of recording an episode, right? Like, if we were to address properly every time something comes up between us in a session, right, in the recording session, we would never actually record anything.
That's true.
Like, we can't be in process all the time.
I mean, like, therapists, we can just talk about, the type of toothpaste you have and go into like some deep process about it. One thing I'm kind of digging about our relationship. This has been challenging for Figs and I individually and as a partnership, and it's been really exciting too. And it's like a growing edge for us. But one of the things I love about our relationship is that we have a lot to talk about, just like all the time. We've got like, we don't have a lot of like, maybe we should have like try to build towards more just like spaciousness and quiet between us. But we're always like, well, what about this? And let's process this, right? It feels pretty like alive.
No, it's great that we always have so much to talk to each other about. Well, so here's look, the main juicy part of this session. I think we're going to talk about what the way it's difficult for us in relationship to each other doing the project, right? Obviously, as you hear the couples therapy sessions or see it if you're watching the videos, you get to see how in general it's difficult. But the actual recording of the show brings up relationship issues between us. So this is the main thing we wanted to talk about. But before we get there, like I guess I wanted to ask you, Teale, how do you feel? What is it like doing this in general? And so and I mean its entirety: the therapy sessions, the reviewing the sessions, the recording the sessions. And we haven't even gotten to the place yet where then those sessions are out in the public domain. So that'll be another thing to process. But how has the overall process so far been for you?
I guess it's harder than I anticipated for myself, just like, maybe kind of feeling like, whoa. I feel like, first of all, I have a lot of, maybe I've got a lot of issues, or kind of like being faced with like this part. And so I feel proud of myself that I'm being brave and exploring those, because those issues come up between you and I all the time. But now I'm just kind of like really diving into them. Yeah. That's obviously kind of the number one. That's in therapy. And then being brave about sharing them with other people. So that's been big for me. Yeah. And then, but the recording of like the podcast, it's been harrowing. I feel like there's some areas.
That's quite like, go on, yeah.
Can you tell I read novels?
I can, but it's very dramatic.
I know.
But yeah, there has been harrowing moments. You're right. Go ahead.
But sometimes, we've been really excited. We've had like very positive weeks about them, like, yes, let's do this. And then we kind of have had like a little bit of a more challenging week this last one.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting. You wouldn't have anticipated, although there was reason to anticipate, that it was actually the recording of the shows that would be the most difficult part. The therapy sessions are not actually that difficult. Yeah. It brings up feelings. Yeah, but this thing, true. I think, because it's just easier when there's not a mixed agenda. Now, I'm actually coming up with this right now in the moment. This isn't, again, something I really articulated or formed inside my own mind before. I think why the sessions are easier, even though we're processing difficult feelings, we truly are just in the session. Like, I'm not thinking during the session, like, what's this going to be like for the listeners or the viewers?
Right.
And so it's just you and me being with each other in our emotional process. It's just a single agenda, single, goal, which is just to be in emotional process with each other and learn and be curious about ourselves. That actually is pretty easy. I think why the recording sessions we do of the actual podcast episodes, why that creates more tension between you and I interpersonally, relationship wise, is because there's two agendas. There's two different big things going on. And this is what makes relationships so difficult, right? Because obviously, one, we're recording an episode of a podcast, but in the process of recording the episode of the podcast, our relationship is still ongoing.
Right.
And so there's a way in which the agenda is almost like an insult to our relationship in a way, right? Because let's say, if let's say there's something that happens where I don't hear you during an episode recording, that hurts your feelings, right? But what are we going to do? Are we going to process that real time? Like, we're already processing in the session, but then are we also going to process real time, like what feelings got touched inside of both of us when the recording didn't go perfectly?
Right.
So it's a tough one, but I think this is really important, right? Because, you know, I like this, I don't know, is it like a racing expression in general, or it's Irish English expression? There's, you know, horses for courses. I've said that to you before, right? Like there's just certain times where I think it's really good that you and I are able to process what is it that's really happening between us right now. And I think doing that really well, the idea is that then gives us the opportunity, or gives us the ability to then let things go and not process, right? And so this is what I wanted to talk about, that, you know, that in the actual recording, sometimes it's emotionally like tense between us, right? And do you want to share a little bit about how that shows up for you in the actual recording of the shows?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely like probably important for our listeners, and it's something that's not like a fully baked, you know, understanding between you and I, but I think that, you know, the fact that Figs, I can get a little self-conscious about how, like, when Figs speaks and when I speak, and am I speaking enough? Am I sharing enough in these kind of processing, you know, preparation for the podcast or recording for the podcast? And so, it's actually kind of like a rat's nest when you open that up a little bit, because you were helping me understand wanting to feel really celebrated and like you can take up space, and that the people around you are not threatened by that, and that you have some kind of wounds that come up around that, and I have some wounds that come up around, like, is what I have to say important, and maybe some self-esteem stuff that comes up. And obviously I feel really positive about what Figs and I record almost all the time. I'm like, oh, I think that was great. Right. And what Figs and I have discovered over many years is that he has a very different feeling about interviews or live, you know, recordings that we do. And we've actually backed away from projects, even just like doing interviews together, because of my feeling like, well, did I share enough, or did you give me enough space? Right. And you feeling like, oh my gosh, Teale, like as though what you're doing is not okay. You mean me feeling like I'm being criticized? Yeah, being criticized. And then on top of that, like, this is one thing personally, is like Figs and I have, you know, a good amount of, we have a lot of equality, but professionally, Figs is at a more advanced place in his career. He's like, you know, done studying I haven't done. He's done emotional processing I haven't done. He's older than me. You probably can't tell because he's like so beautiful and baby faced, but by like kind of a significant amount. You have more life experience.
Exactly. You have all your hair.
I've got a little too much of it.
Okay, well, right now you've got like big head.
I
big
know.
Hair.
Big head and big hair. That's okay. But so that's, we kind of like, he's kind of like, well, you know, and obviously, if you haven't been able to tell, Figs is a great just speaker. I can't speak like him in terms of just off the cuff, let me prove my point. I can with my clients and in my sessions when I'm kind of engaged like that, but as a speaker, I'm a little bit more new to this process. And you're more experienced, obviously. And I think, it's like how to share the space. It's like we're putting on a couple different hats, like the equality of our relationship, the equality of our professional.
Sorry, yeah, definitely the bone broth is.
Is it smelly?
Yeah, Teale is drinking bone broth.
But it's
I
not...
said it was going to be fine, but you're right. It's kind of an intense aroma. Well, look, but by the way, look,
so
I
good.
even
Maybe
noticed this is easier. See, right now, I'm not. I think this is a really, really crucial point. There's something about what we're doing right now is the agenda of the podcast.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy for me to sit here and listen to you and be at ease inside myself and give you this, this all. I'm happy to give you all the space. I think something happens in me when I feel like there's this thing we have to do.
Yeah.
And that has to take precedent over what happens between us. Mm-hmm. Now, I know, like, I know why that is a disaster, because if I hurt your feelings, if I, talk too much or don't give you space or seems like I don't value you during the recording, it's going to make the recording go really badly, right? Because you're going to have explicitly or implicitly some reactivity.
Sure.
And we're going to get in a cycle that's ongoing underneath it seems like we're still meeting the agenda, but we're both not feeling good inside, right? But it is amazing, like this conversation is so much easier for me. I'm not feeling a threat of like, it's going, like you said, Teale, I usually think things are going badly, but I don't really feel that right now because it's so crystal clear exactly what we're doing. It's not confusing.
Yeah.
Right. So it really is an interesting process. And if I could be so bold just to, there was a moment in my life where I thought I wanted to become an actor, like a professional actor, because there are, in certain contexts, just like as a couples therapist, and even like right now, I can really take in information really well. Like I take in a lot of information. I'm able to hear and respond, and like I did so much improvisation with dance and theater improv, and then as a therapist, I can see other people and feel what they're feeling and respond to them. But I'm only coming to realize just how contextual that skill is of mine, because once I feel like the camera is on and there is an agenda, there are lines like I have to deliver, it's very hard for me to not feel so threatened that it's almost like literally all my senses are shut down. Like I can't hear. It's very hard for me to hear what you're saying. As you know, it's very hard for me to read anything. Like sometimes we have to read, what is it that we're talking about today?
Or people will ask,
Oh, they ask a question, exactly.
Yeah, so Figs is like, as you can see, very, very bright, a rapid processor, as our therapist calls him. And like, not just bright, just like, you're really smart.
Wait, thank you. Well,
I'm not trying to make you feel good, but it's just legit. I'm trying to help our people, but you have these limitations that can come up. And,
in certain contexts, I am really dim, right? And what I mean by dim,
the
right?
screen just went dim.
Right, the screen
Whoa.
went dim, right? You're crazy.
Freudian dimming.
But yeah, my ability to process information. And when I think I'm on stage, diminishes greatly. Now, the reason I want us to do this particular episode and what we're doing right now is I don't want to shrink away from that. I want to do exactly what we do in the therapy sessions. Is I want to move into it and study it and get curious about it. And become, even if it's uncomfortable friends, become uncomfortable friends with this place inside me where I get overwhelmed, I feel threatened, I then feel threatened if you're talking, I feel if I'm not talking, everything is going like it's going badly. Like when you are talking, that's when then I'm left with myself, and because I feel threatened inside, it's more uncomfortable for me when I'm not talking, and so I really want to like stay with that process and like not run away from it, and I guess I'm asking you, even though I know it can be painful for you too, then obviously to not feel valued, to feel mansplained. I'm a mansplainer. That don't, my request is don't give up. Like, let's stay in the fire. Because I think you and I are going to learn so much about ourselves by continuing, to tolerate the discomfort that this project puts us into.
Well, I love how you put that, and it feels really vulnerable, and you're talking about just how you can feel your limitations,
right?
And, your excitement, and yeah, I'm open to trying.
That's you're open to trying. Well, say more. What do you mean?
Yeah,
because it doesn't like
I wish I could do like a full-fledged like fuck yes.
Right.
And like I think that I would want to meet your energy. But most of all, I want to meet your energy just in my authentic place. And this has already been a really big learning experience for me and for us. And like I said, I'm open to this. Like you named, when you feel threatened and you feel like when I'm talking, it's hard for you to like be with, pay attention to what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's hard for me to be with myself. And then of course it comes across like it's hard for me to hear you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I find myself getting like small and getting like wanting to walk on eggshells and just not wanting to talk until you give me like an obvious indication that that's okay. So I find our couples therapy sessions very freeing. I can really be myself, but in the processing, I feel like I get small, and that's where I'm at right now. But earlier this week, I wasn't small. I was more kind of brazen, and I kind of, I didn't use discernment to kind of have an opportunity to process. I'm kind of like, oh, we're processing. Let's process this, and it didn't go well. And
you're talking about when we did a recording.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just saying like. I'm like feeling small right now, but I was feeling big earlier this week, and I kind of like showed that, and I think it really hurt you, and it really, you felt criticized, and I kind of felt like, oh my God, I'm not being discerning about when I'm processing, and so now I'm just kind of scared.
Yeah.
I think what can happen is, if I can just be vague and say, oh, some self-esteem or stuff comes up when you say, like here you're saying it's hard to stay with yourself when I'm talking, and like we're naming kind of the reactive patterns. It looks like you can't listen, or that there's not space, or you don't, or when I talk you're not happy with me. And I think so it helps me to know that it's part of your process. So this is even just kind of illuminating for me. But of course, in the moment, it touches a place inside for me where I feel like what I have to say isn't valuable. And I think having, growing up and having like some learning differences, and being kind of like a wild teen that expressed myself and was, definitely accepted in my friendship groups, but was kind of felt like not as accepted. It just touches all these like little tender spots of being like, do I deserve a place to be here?
Right.
And am I a good communicator? And I feel that I am in my own practice, but I'm in uncertain territory. And then when I have a moment with the person I love more than anyone who looks a little bit like you're trailing off, or you're being vague, Teale, or finish your thought, or, why are you speaking there? It's like it kind of like goes to my heart, and just it can hurt so bad that part of me wants to run away. So when you're like, I just don't want you to give up, or don't give up on us, or don't give up on this, like there's nothing more that I want than to do this project and to have it be like a rich experience for us and for our listeners. And there's also a part of me that's like, I'm feeling kind of fragile, and
Sure.
I hope I can do it, and I hope I can, you know, you and I can process enough that I can remember and be reminded about what's really happening for you, and then you can maybe learn a little bit more
Right.
about where my vulnerability touches, because I can get critical of you and be like, why are you doing that? Why are you not giving me space?
Yeah.
And that's what you see, and that touches other wounds that you have.
Right. Exactly. It does. You know, and that's where, you know, it's complicated, right? That we're trying to record an episode, but while we're recording the episode, relationship significant things are happening between us, right? So how to attend to both of them. And I, you know, like the therapy sessions, like even like what we're doing right now, you and I processing them outside of the recording session, but you know, at least now we've done this, we can even name them when they're happening, maybe during the recording session. But, you know, hopefully the goal of knowing ourselves and each other as well as we do is sometimes we can wait to process, right? Like, you know, like, oh, I got my feelings hurt. I can see Teale's feelings are hurt, but we can continue with just completing the task at hand, right? Like that's my hope. Not that it's an abandoning of you, leaving you hurting, or of me leaving me hurting. That we somehow can.
It's just, can I just say though, like
Yeah.
in relation to that, that sounds like your goal for me. Is that you'd like me to be able to,
Right.
like contain my reactivity.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a good point. I definitely would like you to be able to contain your reactivity. But you're right. Like, what is my goal for myself? Like my goal for myself is to keep working on being able to listen and be present, and just to keep. I actually want you to have a bigger and bigger voice, and for my voice to be less and less important in our business, right? Like so I would like to keep that. That's my goal, but it's not always easy for me, and so I want to keep working on that and helping you feel valued, and that there's space for you. You know, and like I said, look, I'm aware of I appreciate you naming it. There are so many different dynamics that make it complicated. Well, again, I want to be very clear. You feeling you're valued and there's space for you, and that I celebrate your contribution is my number one most important thing that I want to work on. And it is complicated. Like, you know, I do look at what part of this, look, I'm a man, you're a woman, I'm older, you're young. Like, you know, I don't know whether there's some built-in patriarchal part of it where I'm likely to think I have to talk to resolve things. You know, I'm totally up for like continuing to study that and notice it. And
Good for you. That's really brave.
thank you. Yeah. And then, yeah, look, there is this weird, like you and I are equals in our relationship, like completely. And yet what we do for a living is we talk about relationship, and it just turned out that from the time we met that I was further along in that journey, than you were. And the gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, which I'm really happy about, right? Like I'm really, really happy about. But there is both historically, there's some kind of maybe historical habits that of me being seen as the one that knew the answers to things. Mm-hmm. And some of that is just not accurate anymore. So I think it's a realigning with the truth that you're an expert in your own right? You do amazing work with couples and individuals. And yeah, like some of it, and there is some, maybe there's not, maybe there is some part where I know the structure a bit better of what it is we're trying to do. Like, with the narrative structure, what's the introduction, what's the middle piece, and what's the conclusion on the overall project on any given episode. And so sometimes I feel a responsibility to actually, I feel I'm left more alone with the responsibility of making sure we execute on the structural narrative that some of the realigning between us, again, I pause now because I realize there's a request I'm making of you is like, the more what it is, where we are in the overall project, where we are in this episode, what it is we're really trying to achieve, then what I'm hoping will happen is I don't feel I have to hold the reins so tightly, because I feel like you're really with me, not only in the moment-to-moment talking and what the point is in the second, but how we're going to get to A to Z in 40 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think two things come up. One is that I think you're totally right. I think that you are holding some of the pieces that are really important for the structure, and that being the holder of that, you can feel the aloneness, and then you can feel more in that kind of pursuer's role of wanting to be directive and kind of more in control of the structure.
Yeah.
And so it helps me to hear that you feel alone with it. And I think you're right. For the listeners back home, I'm in the middle of another very exciting project, and my mind is in two places right now. Even though this is the thing that's gonna, that really, really feels vital and exciting and alive for right now. But I'm really wrapping something up. So Figs knew I have two, and we're in two hats right now. And so one of that, it's not to be defensive, but just to recognize, I think I can move towards that. I feel like I'm interested. I'm excited. I don't want you to feel so alone. I also just recognize that, I know you know this, that people contribute in different ways, right? And that, there hasn't been a chance to say, oh, does Teale know this structure? Because you can take over pretty quickly. And can Teale do this? And because I do it in a different way than you, right? It's kind of like, I hear spouses say, well, I do try to clean the kitchen, but it's not like how you want it exactly. And someone's like, but I really need you to bring out the sponge because it actually means this to me. So that's what you're doing, is helping me see, I can wring out the sponge how you want me to do it, because there's something deep down inside that you're saying, I really want you to be here with me, Teale. You're so important to me. Yeah. I just want to feel that you care and that we're in it together. Absolutely. And I can really, that helps me kind of, my head goes up. I feel like, oh, I thought I was just kind of shitty. No. I thought I was just kind of a disappointment, and then that's why you were taking over. So it's a negative cycle. Yes. That we have identified in our couples therapy session.
Yeah, it's good to know. Look, I take over when I feel scared. And what I'd rather be able to do is let you know, hey, look, I'm scared, I'm alone with this, and and the story is I have to take over control of, managing the structure of a given episode recording, because that creates other problems, right? Because then you don't feel valued, you don't feel heard, and you get your feelings hurt, totally understandably. So look, I'm going to work on not taking over, and then so I won't leave you feeling not valued, and hurt, right? And then again, the request is then, you help me, the vulnerable request is, please help me feel like I don't have to take over. You know what I mean? Like, do your part, right? I mean, please, but I'm still going to do my work regardless. Sorry, my mind just went to like, look, this whole business of having employees, the whole point of doing it, as I really want to lift up other people's voices. I don't want it to be the Figs show. The whole reason we had the name Empathy was to get this away from being Figs centric. And that is it is still a work in progress, right? It's still a work in progress.
You don't want to be Beyonce?
I do not want to be Beyonce, but there is very good. But so look, when I say it's a work in progress, it's a work in progress in loads of different ways. It's hard to trust other people, that people will be there, people do the work, and I trust you completely until I don't. And the main reason I don't is I just get really scared, right? But then it hurts your feelings, right? When I don't trust you. Totally understandable. And I know that's true for everybody, right? Our staff, therapists, or our technical team. If I don't trust them and then I start trying to get Mr. Controlling Pants, it's going to really hurt their feelings. So this is something that I'm working on all the time. Thank you for working with me as I learn about myself.
Oh, you're welcome, sweetie.
Cool. Anything else you want to share about the process?
I think I'm feeling a little bit more like kind of peeking my head out of the hole, like a little fox, kind of sniffing the air, that your vulnerability really means a lot to me. And it's not just like, oh, Figs, you need to work on being less reactive and just be in that place. I really think that what I hear is that the more involved I am, maybe your nervous system can relax a little bit.
Exactly.
And that I'm so important to the process, and that you're working on elevating my voice, that you do love my voice, and that's part of why you really want me here, although you can want me here in a specific way, that it makes sense that that when I don't show up, or I don't respond in ways that you're anticipating, that it can really hurt you, and that you can get more critical or take over. And so I'm touched by that. And I want to work on my reactivity when that doesn't happen, because inevitably it's going to happen. We're going to get into this negative cycle.
Yeah, of course.
And so what I'm hearing is that, and what we had kind of happened disastrously, which is for another day, is that when I'm feeling that and not addressing it, I can be really critical.
Right.
Hey, I'm not being heard. And that touched a lot of really painful things for you. So working on when I'm sharing, is it an appropriate time? And I'm working on integrating that, and it makes so much sense to me, because it hurt you in a lot of ways. Right.
Yeah. Thank you. And I just a little bit, thank you. And what I think you're referring to is like, look, it's just a context, right? Like if we're at a dinner with 10, which one day again we'll be at dinners with other people, and then you start telling people about how smelly my farts are. That is very different that you told like 10 people at a dinner how Figs has really smelly farts, right? That's very different from you taking me aside, just you and me, and saying, hey Figs, wanted to tell you about your farts are really stinky, right? And so I'm always up for processing with you, right? I just, again, like there's a moment when we're with the 10 people and I farted. One snuck out.
Gross. Like, why does it have to,
Why-
like, why
Hey,
do
it
things
was
get
just
to
whatever-
sneak?
Exactly.
This is the age that I'm talking about.
Thank you. But no, I was only making this one up. But now it turns out it's true. But like, look, there's a way in which you don't have to say it at the dinner, because it just magnifies it.
I hear you.
It magnifies it. So look, this has been a really rich process. It's been a lot to. I'm really good to go through, to talk through what happens between us in the therapy session. And then, of course, to now talk through what happens in the recording of the sessions.
Yeah.
It feels really helpful for us. I hope it's useful for you, the listeners and viewers. Just the last point that I wanted, or, we want to talk about is just to go into a little bit more detail about the difference between how we show up in therapy sessions and show up for each other when we're processing hurt feelings between us, inside either of us individually or between us outside of a therapy session, and how we show up while recording a podcast session, or like substitute recording a podcast session for we're at dinner with friends, those
Yes.
10 friends where I let out the fart, right? That doesn't happen.
He did. No, he has so many friends. You're well loved.
Thank you. But, or, whatever it is, we're trying to get to our journey and we're late. Like, how do we get to the journey? How do we get to our final destination without having to stop because we hurt each other's feelings on the way?
Right.
We don't want to forget and abandon the part of our feelings got hurt, but sometimes we gotta be able to bookmark them,
Right.
right? But we have to earn the right to bookmark hurt feelings.
Such a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
And so here's the way I understand, like when I tell my clients all the time, look, a lot of times when I help people process their feelings really deeply, they're like, oh my God, do I have to do that all the time? And I'm like, no, you do not have to do it all the time. But you do have to earn the right to not have to do it all the time. And what that means is that if push came to shove, and we were to process the feelings that got hurt, we would come out we can trust that we can come out the other side of that process feeling more connected to each other.
Right.
And how you get to a place that you could trust is because you've done it so many times in the past that, look, I know Teale just called me out in front of 10 people about my smelly farts. I don't need to process that with her this second. I can bookmark it because I know in the future on our drive home from their house, I will let out an even bigger fart. To punish you. No, that we will be able to process how my feelings were hurt.
Right.
Right. And that's why I didn't pass the potatoes when you asked them.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
But that's why so here's the thing.
It's a great tip for just the, for the listeners.
Exactly.
And I wanted to hear your idea.
Just because here's this processing feelings. Gotta be able to do it, right? That's where the rubber meets the road, right? And then we want to be able to complete tasks with each other. You can't process feelings all the time. My God, like, can't you just go to the beach? No, please.
You're right.
Like, we're going to go to the beach today,
you're
right?
Totally
with the kids.
Right.
Let's just go to the beach. Let's not like put Figs on our walk to the beach. Like, I noticed I wasn't valued. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, it seems like you're critical of me. No,
Right.
Jesus will never make it to the beach, right? But so how do we do it? There is a different skill set then, right? That you want to use. Here's what we do, right? We try and practice this process we call yes and if any of you are familiar with improv, yes and is the golden rule of improv. Whatever the other person says is true. It is a gift and you're excited to receive the gift, and your job is to make the other person look good. Your job is to make me look good. My job is to make you look good. And so that means if someone says to me, let's say I'm very sensitive about the fact that I'm bald, right? I am not at all sensitive. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky that I'm bald, and I couldn't give two tosses, whatever that is, about being bald, right? But let's say, you and I are on stage and there's 200 people in front of us, and you say, look at you big bald effer, right? And it really hurts my feelings. If I'm practicing yes and, I'm going to, it turns out I'm going to have to be a big bald effer now in front of these people. and actually just take it on, because I'm going to make Teale look so good, even though the actual thing she said actually hurt my feelings.
Right.
Because we got to complete the scene. We're going to complete the scene. Right? So, yes, and whatever the other person says is true. It's a gift, and it's an amazing gift you're excited to receive. And then you're going to tell the other person, like, you know what? I love being a big, bald effer. I actually shaved my head off on purpose and waxed it in a way to make sure it would never come back, so I could be your big, bald effer. Right. Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping. I know I'm doing a lot of talking.
No,
now,
you're talking because this is so important. This is so important, and I'm just having this like insight as you're talking about it, how it especially applies to your and my journey a little bit. Right. Can I share it?
Yeah, please.
I think that for a lot of years, we were just like in the grind, in the groove, however you want to put it. And we did processing on the fly. We were having kids. I was finishing graduate school. You were launching this fantastic, business. But like in some ways, we're getting to the earning the right to yes and
exactly
right now,
right,
by doing this work with each other and doing it with our amazing therapist. It's like we've always talked about yes anding, and like I think I'm just starting to really get it, is how to do that, because it's based on what we're doing right now in our therapy,
right? And
that in some ways we've been trying to do that, but like now we're doing it
exactly.
And I feel really like I can really do yes and I keep wanting to do like, you're not a big bald effer because you've got like a little
got some hair.
Side ponytail.
Look at that. That is a fun side ponytail.
What if it just grew up like that?
I wish I had long hair. No. But thank you.
It's so
That's
cute.
a good look.
Did you like that?
I do. But yeah, so look, the rubber meets the road in relationship, and your ability to go from disconnected, we both have hurt feelings, back to connected to each other. You have to be able to do that, or you got to focus the time on that. And that's what earns you the right to then not have to process and actually complete tasks. And then when you're in that process, when you're in those moments where, look, we're not going to process feelings right now. We're going to go to this family dinner, and if we hurt each other's feelings, we're going to look at each other, squeeze each other's hand, and complete the dinner without us having to process in front of our family. You're going to apply this concept right before you go into your family's house for the dinner, right? You're going to look at each other outside the door and go, look, everything you say, I'm going to take as a fact. When you tell everyone you did 80,000 downward dogs this week, even though I saw you on the couch eating popcorn and chocolate all week, I'm going to go, yes, you did. And everyone was better than the last, right? I'm just going to absolutely. I'm not going to when. Show no, you didn't. You chocolate eating, popcorn, gobbling,
goddess,
couch goddess, right? Exactly. I'm just gonna when we're there during that task of getting through this family dinner without melting down, we're gonna yes and each other. On the drive home, I might be, sweetie, I know you have a hard time with your family. The whole 80,000 downward dogs was a little stretch, right? But we're not going to do it there, right? So everything the other person says when you're in a let's just get through this task, it's true. It's a gift. You're going to accept it with excitement, and you're going to make them look good. And if something came up in the process it later, therapy or just between the two of you. You got to have range. You got to be able to do both.
There's a time and a place, people. I'm learning this.
And this is what we are doing in public. We're showing you us processing our feelings, right. And we're also showing you trying, when we do the recordings, us try, even though not today is more like a process. It was more vulnerable.
Yeah, this is not necessarily us doing the yes and. This is us in the process, exactly. Parts of it. Although I think we naturally yes and each other because we're doing some of this deeper work.
Exactly. It's just
but our therapy
way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, in the actual recording of the episodes, we're going to try and keep the emotional process actually something we're talking about that happened in the therapy sessions. And while we may name it with like, hey, by the way, like I got my feelings hurt because I thought you were critical of me, we're not going to derail the recording, making sure we get that done, that process the feelings live.
Sounds great.
Right. We might do another episode like this to talk about what happened and process it.
Well, I've liked this.
Me too. It was really good. It helps feel like more, what do you call it, renewed about this process. And
I'm learning so much from you, by the way.
Oh, no.
And with you, I know.
Yeah. But really, No, I appreciate it. It's hard. I know it is. And it's hard to take in. It always feels very vulnerable to be acknowledged. So thank you. And I am learning so much from you as well, right? And just like so much about myself and the way I process information, the way I hear threats when you're actually feeling soft and warm towards me, but yet I could still hear like I feel like you're criticizing me. Like it's really profound to be willing and open to study oneself in this way, because how I'm interpreting what's happening versus what I see happened, there is quite a big gap between those two things. Right. And so I think that's true for everybody. So, I highly encourage you to keep studying yourself, study your relationship, and thank you for being here and letting us model us in our clumsy way do it. So
exactly. Now you get to study us.
Exactly.
Creatures in the zoo.
Try not to judge us too much. But
you can judge me.
Yeah. So come here.
Beyonce.
Exactly. And me as Shrek, right? But you can judge me as Shrek. But what was I going to say? Hot just because I'm not green.
That's true.
But
just because of that.
But look, we will we'll be back the next time. The next one we'll be back to we'll share one of our therapy sessions.
Yay! So, looking forward to it.
Great. You'll get to hear how we integrated our processing about our recording process. Okay. Take care. Have a good rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you are in your life right now.
Enjoy yourself.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
This was Come Here to Me. Relationship experts walk the talk.
Visit comeheretomepodcast.com for episode transcripts, social media links, and to subscribe to the mailing list.
If you or someone you love are struggling in your relationship or just want to work on making things that little bit better, visit us at empathy.com. That's empathy with an I on the end, not a Y on the end. We've got quizzes, courses, videos, articles, and free consultations for couples counseling or for relationship coaching.